All right, good evening, everyone. Today is November 22nd, 2022, and the time is 6:03 p.m. If we're all ready, I'm going to call this meeting of the Urban Design Commission to order. Pursuant to Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, this meeting of the Urban Design Commission is being conducted by a remote participation. We are recording this meeting, and we will make recordings available upon request as soon as possible after the meeting. My name is Emily Hutchings, one of the senior planners with the Somerville Office of Strategic Planning and Community Development, Planning, Preservation, and Zoning Division. And I have been designated as co-chair for tonight's meeting by Planning, Preservation, and Zoning Director Sarah Lewis. Also with me tonight in the background is Planning, Preservation, and Zoning Planner and Urban Design Commission Liaison, Andrew Graminsky. We're going to start with a roll call of the commission members present. Frank Valdez.
Here.
Andrew Arbaugh.
Here.
Tim Talon.
Present.
Deborah Fennick.
Here.
Gary Ruane is not here. And Tim Hood.
Here.
All right. Our first order of business is the approval of the August 23, 2022 meeting minutes. Do any commissioners have any comments, concerns, or corrections that they would like to note? All right.
Oh, they look good to me.
Great. Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the August 23, 2022 meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second? And roll call vote, Frank Valdez?
Yes.
Andrew Arbaugh?
Yes.
Tim Talon?
Yes.
Deborah Fennick?
Yes. Yes.
Tim Howard?
Yes.
All right, that is all set. Now moving on to design reviews. Our first design review today is 32 to 44 White Street. This is a continued design review. So do I have the applicants for 32 to 44 White Street here present?
Please use the raise hand feature if you are presenting tonight.
You hear me, Emily?
Yes, sir.
This is Adam Dash, attorney rep 48 Grove Street in Somerville, representing SGL Development LLC, which is the applicant for 30 through 44 White Street. If we could also promote Adam Siegel from SGL Development, Peter Quinn and Mark Nielsen from Peter Quinn Architects, and Katya Pasaldo from Verdant.
All right. Thank you all. So as a reminder, you will have 20 minutes to present, and I can give you 10 and 5-minute reminders if you would like.
That'd be great. I just real quickly, we were before the UDC on October 25th, and we're back in response to the points were raised at that by the commission at that meeting. Peter, you want to take it from there?
Oh, has to be green. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for making the time for us this evening. And we've put together kind of a concise presentation of the changes that we've made from the previous presentation in regards to comments that you had made. I think we've addressed everything, hopefully satisfactorily. And so I'm just going to start. I also presented a list in the package of of changes from in a narrative form from the previous submission. So I'll go through those if that's okay. Now I do notice that a couple of people from the commission who were not in the original presentation are here tonight. Can I assume that they've reviewed the recording and we can move forward that way? Emily?
Yes.
For the
Mr.
record,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Just for the record, I have reviewed the recording of the prior meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Valdez has not reviewed the evidence, but he is still able to participate in the discussion. He'll just
Sure.
not be participating in the vote this evening.
Okay, thank you, that's good. Okay, so starting with plan changes that we've made. Right off the bat, one of the things that was brought up on several occasions and from several different directions was the way that we had treated the base of the building in the storefront area. Not storefront, but in the commercial side on the left-hand side of the building. So we've created a niche for a doorway, nice generous space, and you'll see that in elevation as well. So at any point when if there is a commercial customer facing user down here, they will certainly have a nice entry. The other entries are, are put in per the zoning bylaw to have a door. I think it's every 30 feet. Let's see. So we have that, and then on the rear wall, there was quite a bit of discussion about, especially around landscape, about how we were treating this back part of the building. Here we've simply straightened it all out and tried to get rid of some of the kinks that were in here. And now it's just a consistent gravel walkway to the rear. We created a raised bed in this area, and Katya from the landscape department will speak with you about that later. But we knew we were going to have a raised structure here to get the ramp to work underneath it. So we raised it even further with a planting bed, and that is integrated into our planting plans now. In the basement, this is a small thing, but we wanted to take care of. We did widen the drive aisle at the base to make it easier to get in and out of that driveway ramp going up, and we gave a full 20 feet back out for our innovative parking system here. The next thing is we had to revisit our bicycle strategy, especially around short-term bikes. So we do now have our five short-term bicycles that would comply with the code. And we also added a second bench in the front here and moved the short-term bikes over to this recess because we had originally had them on city property. And then didn't want to let this go by without mentioning that on the roof, where we have a lot of mechanical system, that actually supports a structure that is solar ready. So you'll see that in a second when I go through the previews. Let's see, so that structure there can hold those hold the solar panels when the time comes. Now, as far as the elevations go, where most of the work was done, let's get to my notes. We really emphasized what was called facade option number 2. We felt we could work with that the most in bringing it to a conclusion with some of the changes that you had requested. And so we did draw some things from the other 2 facades, but for the most part, we emphasized our work on this, what was called option number 2. So what we've done here is we've used a darker brick in this area in here on the commercial side of the building. We actually presented that in a set with a sample from the manufacturer's website. And on the other side to the right, you see there's a kind of a lighter gray brick. That is what's used here and in this area here. And to the same point, we did use that kind of brick in the upper area of the building to create a little bit of a differentiation of the top level of the building. So that has some of these lighter gray brick stripes up there now. We did add a wooden mullions, and we presented the windows with some scale elements such as blinds, which you presumably have in an office setting or a lab setting. And these planters are much more substantial now. They approach kind of like the full depth you would normally have for good-sized plantings such as we're showing, and that actually becomes part of a crown of the building, if you will. So with the banded brick and then the setback and then this raised planter, they're all architectural elements that are trying to work together to create the top edge of the building. Elsewhere, we let's see here. This spandrel glazing has been refined a little bit, and all the molding system has been is a little more interesting than we had before. We've also introduced some blinds and some sense of the space beyond just for graphic purposes. As you can see up here, we've added another level of this would be green roof, but it'll be a shorter or less depth to the soil. I think we talked about that, but it is another green roof that we managed to expand into. Let's see. The glazing that we're using, these are some of the things we'd like to consider. Of course, we'll try to get a sample and do a site, as-built, or what do you call it, a mock-up. In the main commercial side of the building, we have kind of a gray glass that has a little bit of a blue tint, but it's primarily gray. And then on the other side, the corner, we would like to use a glazing that is a combination of gray and blue. One side, the opaque, it's a light blue, but it also has the spandrel, which is a gray color above. And you can see that here. Now, one thing that we did do that we started to talk about a little bit before was these windows have surrounds, which create a shadow effect. You don't see too much of that the way this is presented right here because everything is somewhat dark. But I think you can see it in the 3D quite well. So what we've done is created a banding that projects about 4 inches from the wall, and it's bicolor. So the outer side of it is a charcoal color, and the inside is white, or off-white, or something like that. And you can see, you can get a sense of how that would work and create a kind of dynamic effect as you walk past the building. Also in the elevations, at that entry that I mentioned before, we tried to locate it further down the building as far as we thought would be useful, so that it acted as a counterpoint to the main entry over here. And in this case, we've also added some signage on that extended canopy that travels the whole length of the building. We've also arranged it so it didn't interfere with our tree pattern. And when people come out of the building, they have more ability to move forward out to the sidewalk without bumping into the tree planters as we had before. On the side view of the building, we've cleaned up these recesses and openings for our automobile ramp and for our truck bay loading area, and these all work pretty well now. I think what I showed last week, the turning radii, so I won't go into that again. But all those things are still held fast and do work.
About 10 minutes left to present.
Thank you. I just have 2 more comments on the rear of the wall, or the rear build of the building. There were some questions about that. So we actually kept the same window proportions that we had on the side, but we don't have the aluminum frames around them, or the projected frames. And this is a stucco finish, and so we're introducing these U channels that are zinc into the whole, to create a grid. And that's carried across the whole rear all the way to this side over here, which is the side facing the immediate abutter. And you can see how we wrapped around the brick at the corner, the end of the facade. So it has a little bit of a, has enough return to be substantial. It's a 3D view that you see from, drone-like. You can see the corner in our commercial building and our articulated screening above with the green roof. With the depth of the soil we have, it's possible that some of this green roof could even get more, larger over time. But we plan in kind of a more modest way to begin with. Street view, a very inviting, sheltered area for the entry. We still have our planter on the side here, and at that I will pass it on to Katya to present.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Great.
Yes.
I'm Katya Pasalba with Verdant Landscape Architecture. This is our revised landscape plan. What we heard last meeting, there were a few comments about some of the buffer plantings and perimeter. Specifically along the left-hand side, we had shown a crushed stone path around the edges of the building with a few perennial plantings within it. And it would be better to not have a, excuse me, someone was calling, have plantings through that pathway. So we've removed those, and also as a result of the building footprint straightening out along the back edge, the path is now just a clear 3-foot wide continuous crushed stone, permeable with a deeper sub-base material so that it'll be a permeable paving all the way around the perimeter. That includes that very southern edge, which is on the top of the page. We had planted some ornamental grasses along that edge, and we've removed those so that the path of travel is totally continuous and clear. There had also been a few trees planted. Yeah, there too. We had also planted some trees along the edge to the left where the building had stepped a little bit in and out, and it was a little bit too narrow for those trees, it was felt. So we have developed this planter design that Peter mentioned before, which is above the structured slab of a part of the roof of the ramp as it goes down. And what we're expecting is a minimum of 2 feet of depth of soil, meaning the planter will probably end up being at least, probably 2.5 feet tall or more, so that along with the drain mat and drainage materials at the bottom, there'd be at least 2 feet of soil to support tree and shrub growth in that planter above the deck. One side of it would be the building wall along the right-hand side, as you see here, and then the rest of it would be planter edges that we would develop taller than the finished grade. So there'll still be a clear path of travel around it alongside the property line. We further to the right now, we've expanded the bioswale, its length, as well as the root zone for the trees to grow in that bioswale. And we're doing this, you can see it in a detail on the next page, but on this page you can see a slightly shaded tone to the right of the curb line. And the intent here in our design includes structural soil below the asphalt paving. So this is a private way. And as part of our project, we're going to have to provide a lot of new utility lines and things, and some of this asphalt will need to be replaced anyways and repaired in kind. And as part of that construction, we will be providing structural soil continuous to the plant bed. Yeah, there's a good picture of it. Thank you. So that bioswale, which is constrained in its width by the garage wall below on the left in this image, it's constrained to about 2 feet wide, which is quite narrow, or 2.5 feet. And what we're doing is providing a place for the roots to grow below sort of slightly smaller than typical curb, underneath that curb and over to the right underneath the asphalt in the private way. And as well as I mentioned, we lengthened the bioswale overall along that sidewalk and are planted a third small tree along that length.
4.5 minutes left to present.
Okay, thank you. We also refined the plant list for the tree plantings along White Street itself. There's actually an overhead wire to the left, so the tree on the far left will have to be a smaller size variety street tree. And we will, as was suggested at our previous meeting, we will meet with the Urban Forestry Division, of course, and go through the species of the trees selected here and make sure that they're appropriate for the situation. And lastly, on the very last, I think there's a third page that shows the roof, Peter, and that's where we can end, I think. As Peter described previously, we've added another level of green roof above the mechanical room area. So there's a much larger zone overall on our roofs that will be vegetated green roof. The zone above the mechanicals in the center of the building there will be a 6-inch depth green roof, vegetated green roof, more like sedums and slightly smaller plant materials. And then the zone around the perimeter at that lower level that Peter has designed as a taller architectural element as well would be able to host taller ornamental grasses and things, of course. So right now we're showing 6 to 10-inch depth of growing medium. And overall, we still meet the green score, so that's good. And I think we've improved the plan overall with everyone's comments and with all these refinements. Thank you.
I think we're done with our presentation. We've presented everything that represents changes to the plans. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter. And Katya.
Sorry, you said that concludes your presentation?
Yeah,
Yes,
it does, yes.
All right, thank you all. I'd like to open it up now to the commission for comments and feedback.
I think on the landscape edits, I don't have comment. I appreciate the edits that have been made. So thank you for responding.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Is there any comments on the, any additional comments on the landscaping?
Could you clarify what the paving material is at the bike parking area?
The bike parking area?
That will be above, yeah, that will be above structured slab above the garage level. So I believe it will be concrete paving.
Okay, so
Correct me if you had a different comment. Excuse me,
Yes,
Tim, go ahead.
Yeah, just to be clear, we're talking about this area right in here, correct? This is all covered
Correct.
by building above. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, you know, we probably end up doing this with a simple paver, but it would not be permeable because it's sitting on top of structure. We would add it for aesthetic purposes and transition out to why we really haven't gone beyond that yet.
What are those 3 dash boxes in front of the bikes?
Okay, so we will have a very large underground electrical vault. This is flush with the ground, and it does usually have these, these galvanized metal covers on them, and you can walk across. And yeah.
So Emily, I had a question pertaining these underground vaults. Being that now everything from a sustainability perspective and from a the idea of like being able to maintain power under any circumstances, a lot of places that are being designed are not allowing for vaults to be located on below grade, just because of standards that are being established from energy and sustainability. The idea that it's being proposed that these are below grade, this has not been obviously reviewed or vetted with NSTAR or Eversource. And what happens to the design if these get pushed up and that they need to be maintained at a level that is above an established datum that Cambridge has one, which is, for purposes of water impacted these. What happens in that situation? Cambridge does not allow on the ground. In Boston does not allow on the ground electrical volts anymore. So why are we even considering or thinking that this is okay if at any point these are going to come above, and then where are they going to be located?
So I
I
can speak to,
Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. So I can speak to the process a bit. I'm not sure how we compare with Cambridge or Boston, but I do know that we have sustainability and environmental requirements and application materials that must be provided with a completed application.
Sure, but all of this is due to resiliency. The idea that everything needs to be above a particular level of water. In Cambridge is 27.2, I forget what it is, but are we okay with these being allowed to be presented to be below grade? If what happens, and I guess Peter, I'm just asking, what happens if when you go in front of Eversource or NSTAR and they say no, you can't put this below grade, which I'm pretty sure it's going to happen, and now you need to bring them up. I'm asking for an alternate. What is the alternate of it? And I think that we just need to be conscious of it.
Is very, very dramatic in the sense that, we would create a vault or what they call an alcove, which can be inside the building, but it's a very significant change. Now we have in fact had initial discussions with NSTAR. We've used these in other locations around Somerville, and we've always checked.
No, I know that. I know that it's been used around Somerville. All I'm bringing it to my colleagues, the idea that we are all working with this resiliency, the idea that water levels are rising. NSTAR, I know for a fact that NSTAR and Eversource are not allowing for underground vaults. I'm pretty sure this is not going to be allowed, Peter, because of what we're moving to. So I would say that there needs to be an alternate potentially as to how this would be implemented within the building that the committee would need to review and be able to be comfortable with as well. If this happens, then I think we just have to be prepared for that.
We would come back. Now, I just will tell you anecdotally that I have a building in Cambridge with the same size of vault. And you're right about the 27.2 or whatever it is as the datum that Cambridge cuts off. So in that case, we actually, we were in a position where we could do it. We raised the vault 2 feet out, or about a foot and a half out of the ground, and created a curve around it. And Eversource at that point had no problem with it. So it really does depend on what your elevation is at the location. And I think we did a preliminary check on this, and we felt very fine.
Sure. And again, I don't know this. I'm just putting it out there for people who are going to be voting on this, because I can't vote on it, but people who are reviewing this, because it could have an impact on your design and your pedestrian components.
So I think what is relevant to the design conversation is raised vaults and utilities they're not allowed in the fronts of the buildings for our design requirements, so they would not be visible regardless of whether they were undergrounded or located somewhere else. They wouldn't be visible.
But Emily, you understand the fact that all I'm saying is that the assumption is that they're underground right now. If they're not allowed underground by some design, they're going to be moved somewhere. Where they get moved does impact the review committee and the Urban Design Commission's component in being able to review that and address that. That's what I'm saying.
And we would come back. If that happened, we would come back with that.
At the moment, we're complying with the Somerville rules, and so if we end up changing it, as Peter said, then obviously that would be a change, and we would have to go through that process. But right now, this is what we're showing, which is Somerville compliant.
Can you talk about the walking surface above that vault?
Yeah, so it has the same pavers that you would have everywhere else, except for where these access panels are. And so those would be like a galvanized metal. You just walk right over. Other than bicycles and emergency exit, this is not a main entry here. This is off to the side.
I'm wondering if you could talk a little about the choice of material on the non-street facing sides of the building, the stucco.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty dramatic material transition between the street facing sides and what kind of appears like a back of the building.
Right. Yeah. So, we wanted to. This is a kind of a tight back side here, and it's not highly visible from the street. You will see the corner of it here when you're coming down White Street Place, and you certainly would see it on White Street when you're coming down on this side. And so we wanted to come up with a material that is a secondary material, but it also supports the geometries and the kind of scale that we have with the brick by introducing the sprig line. It is, obviously a cheaper product, but this is a quality stucco material. In other words, it's not a cheap exterior finish. And it is disappointing, if you will, with the geometries of this grid. So I don't know if that answers your question, but we've taken that approach. We've also do have a brick base and corner that we're maintaining. So at eye level or a little bit below eye level, you still will see a nice brick material.
Yeah. So what's proposed is an actual real masonry stucco, not an EIFS, not a synthetic stucco.
Well, I can't say exactly how it's put together, but it would be like a two-coat stucco, on a hard surface, and it is, there's a number of different manufacturers. We typically spec Stowe, that has a lot of textures and finishes. This is, I think if you're thinking this is like a cheap IFAS job with, kind of just radius corners cut out of the foam, that's not what this is. This is kind of more like the real deal. But it's not like a Italian stucco where you put it on masonry or something like that. It's not that. We have exterior insulation and build up to a hard surface outside that.
A question to that, Emily, to what Tim is saying, would at any point would it be a requirement to have a mock-up of the materials on site to be able to review this high quality stucco material? Or this project would not require a mock-up?
I don't believe that this project meets the requirements for a mock-up or physical model.
I will note, this is Andrew Graminsky, that the commission can recommend that the planning board condition the project that a physical mock-up is created and reviewed by the UDC. I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah. I mean, just Tim's observation, I just want to say, the idea of a quality stucco material, I haven't heard that in a long time. That sounds like an oxymoron to me.
Yeah, and Mr. Graminsky is correct. You can provide recommendations that the planning board receive sample materials and further review certain materials. You can note recommendations for changes, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I'd suggest that, and maybe that we take that path. My question was in part because there is a specific architectural design guideline for this district and basically every district that recommends against the use of EIFS. And I think, they're particularly referring to the really cheap EIFS systems, which understand What you're proposing here isn't that. But I do think, given this building and its context, this is a building that is much taller than what's around it. And that's likely to remain so, particularly on this side of the building. It's a residentially zoned neighborhood next to it. So these sides of the buildings are going to be visible from a distance, both from residential properties and adjacent streets. To me, I feel like the street-facing facades are really well composed. There's depth. I think there's high quality materials being used. But this to me feels like a bit of a back, and a back that's going to be pretty visible. I think it would be different if this was adjacent to a district of buildings of similar height, because it wouldn't be visible from a distance. But in this case, it will be.
Well, I think we, if I may speak, we looked at the 3 different materials. One was the stucco, as I described. The other would be fiber cement, which, I think probably has the cheapest look of the 3. They must have done very carefully. And then the other would be metal panel system. So, we certainly, have thought about all of those. They're probably, in similar cost range, depending on what product you actually specified. But I think we're open to some suggestions if we can move along, and by the time we get to the planning board, I'm sure they're going to want to put their stamp on it. We'll all settle on an approach that works.
Yeah. I mean, would you consider carrying the brick around the building? Is that prohibitive?
It's a really it's a huge expense. I mean, this is, as you pointed out, we have high quality materials. The part you left out, and expensive along the street side. So I think we need to do something on the back sides that that looks good, and doesn't look like it's an afterthought, but it actually works with the other facade. So
yeah, I mean, I think of similar scaled buildings in the area. There's the Leslie University Arts Building on Mass Ave, for example, that's immediately adjacent to a residential neighborhood, and that carries the terracotta all the way around the building on all sides, including on the neighborhood facing side. There's an affordable housing development was just built next to that that carries a brick around all 4 sides of the building as well. And so I guess I'm not necessarily opposed to a material transition on different sides of the building. Maybe part of what I'm reacting to is it just seems very two-dimensional now, maybe because of how little the brick is returning onto the non-street facing sides. That there's the brick sides of the building, and then there's something else.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in this case, there is a jog in the building right here, represented by this line, vertical line. Perhaps we could take the brick to that point and then go to the other material. Just to acknowledge, as you say, the view down White Street Place. If we feel significant, presumably at some point there'll be a building, facing this building on the side. So probably at similar height.
I have a couple of questions about the windows and the details. It was a little hard for me to hear your description, like of the depth of the hoods, and and the detail. I think you said a lighter brick that was that returned in, or whatever. But can you describe them again?
Yeah, I'll go over it again. So,
and the shades.
Yep. What we have here is a material. I have this 3D. Those are probably best. So each of the windows has a 3-sided frame that extends out in front of the brick approximately 4 inches. And they have an additional, 3.5 to 4 inch depth into the wall as well. So this is a band that's 7 to 8 inches deep total, half in, half out of the building. And the intention is kind of a play with light and shadow, which is that the inside of it is a white color, and the outside of it is a charcoal color. And you can see, it's a little hard to see, I understand, but that's how it works. And then there's a sill at the bottom, which we do with metal or with a piece of ceramic material. So that that's the intention of these windows, and that's carried around to this side over here as well. You can actually see the projection a little better. And then the blinds and the lights, those are really just acknowledging that a lab like this, designing these levels for lab use, are going to have solar blinds of some kind, not so much for privacy, but for solar gain, especially in the strong western sun, and any other kind of need that they may have inside, to cut out sunlight. So here we've drawn, for the purpose of this perspective, all the same height, but there is actually a mullion, that's coincident with the bottom of the blind. That answer your question?
Yeah, it did. So just a few comments here. Well, so first, I think the design on the street sides has come along, and I think it's good. And I think the depth of those hoods, I'll call them, around the windows, is important. And if it could,
there's kind of a precedent by this, right?
Yeah, those are probably much deeper than 4 inches.
They
So
are. Yeah.
I would say the deeper they can be, the better, to get more shadow. You're not going to get a lot of shadow playing on the dark brick, but you're saying that it's, there'll be a brightness on the inside. I think the thing that worries me is the solar shading, your solar control, which, with blinds that are, going to be all different heights, and eventually, and if they're a good quality, this won't happen, but, they'll start to be less organized even than that. They make a big difference in the way we read, a building. And I wish there was some uniform to this facade, something, exterior or interior that provided a little more, that accommodated, for the inside, that solar control, but was not as going to yield something that is sort of as disorganized as that.
And that's an interesting comment.
I don't think it's a positive thing. Maybe some people do feel that that's a good thing to have shades all at different heights, but they all of a sudden, those of, you won't see into the building at night, except, around those shades of stop, and, they'll really play on the, I guess, the overall effect of the windows within the wall.
So just a couple things. These are not intended to be opaque shades. So you would, even at night, if lights were on, you would see a little bit of light beyond there. And so we typically, we've done a number of glass buildings, and we do put them on a uniform motor control. So I would imagine with something like this, our render was having a little bit of fun with different heights, but it really would be more like what we're showing in the 3D, where the shades, would come down to kind of a more uniform height, maybe, half the windows on one control and the other half on another. So it's really how you set it up. And I can't imagine a commercial lab building like this would be set up in a way that people could adjust it all over the place, because I think it would be quite difficult to manage.
Okay.
I would say. Yeah.
It's
a loop that we didn't address, and but one I've thought about a lot, having designed a few glass buildings, in which I had done another one.
Yeah. How about the at the tower, the glass element?
Yeah.
How are you getting light there?
Yeah. So there are a series of shades as well, all motorized, of course. And those would be of a somewhat different quality. We do want to be able to see in, but we also don't want to have a lot of light leakage at night. And so, that would be a series of, similar blinds. We'd probably look at something that's a little more opaque. It could have an inner and outer roller, depending on during the day. If you have bright sun, we could pull down and still allow a lot of light in, but then at night would be a little more private, so there's not a lot of light leakage out to the sidewalks and the neighbors. But these are intended at the corner to be more kind of common areas for the users. They would have presumably conference room and reception lobby and some of those typical public functions before you get into the lab areas. So we don't want to shut them off entirely. I don't.
Okay.
That's my attitude on this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
I do want to note we've just passed the 20-minute discussion mark, so we can keep going a little bit longer, but I think we've discussed the landscaping. I think we've covered that. I think we've covered the building materiality, the differences between the street-facing facades and the rear facades, and the changes to the windows. Are there any other aspects? Oh, and the transformers, the undergrounded transformers, and how they may impact the design. Are there any other aspects of this design that the commission would like to review before wrapping up?
Yeah, I'd like to talk about the mechanical penthouse screening a little. This project's in the MR4 district. The by right height of the penthouse is 10 feet. Looks like you're seeking a special permit to exceed that up to 16 feet for the penthouse. Understand the need for larger space for mechanical equipment for a lab building, if indeed this is really a lab building. But I think that, as part of exceeding the by right height limit means that this is really going to be a visible part of the building. And again, just wondering if you can talk a little more about that.
So, the way it's portrayed here in the 3D does make it look like a flat wall. I think, we probably end up having much more articulation to it depending on cost. So we show this sample here, which has some very deep reveals in it. I think we need to study that further, before we resolve it completely, because there could be some acoustic issues that we need to address as well. So that will kind of, on the show for us in making our final selection. Where I've done these before, we've also just simply built frames and then put like a punch metal material on the exterior, that creates a kind of gauze-like covering around it, without entirely enclosing it. So, those are some of the choices. That's a little bit how it's actually drawn on these 3D models, like a flat surface. What we're hoping to do, honestly, is to get this green roof, the road, especially on the street face, where we have the deeper soil medium, to really get this to grow in front of it, so that it's kind of a layered system. And you can see here, with a brick layer, a green layer, and then the screen layer. I think that will be a good effect to kind of reduce the monumentality of the roof structure.
Yeah, I agree. If that's more of an intensive green roof and those plantings are actually tall enough to be visible from the ground, that'll, I think, really help in buffering. That help mitigate the overall height. Yeah. Can you go to the roof plan, the overall roof plan? So is that the mechanical unit? Is that an air handling unit that's kind of outside of the screened area of the penthouse?
No, everything is in the screened area. So this area here where the solar panels are is showing you the screened area that is open to the sky and where we put the solar ready area. But there's also an interior mechanical room that comes with this kind of building. And so that is an enclosed structure.
But then mech unit 3, which is north of
that
that,
is also,
that
that's
outside?
also, yeah, that's screened as well. Okay.
Okay.
I had two quick questions, comments. The image, taken kind of showing the corner of the glass. It's showing the glass without a mullion at the corner. I'm just wondering if that was achievable, if that was really the design intent, or is there going to be a line that's expressed there? And then my second question was,
okay, sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
if you want to talk about that, that's okay.
Yeah, it's just done with a silicone gasket, so there is actually like seal there, but it's braced by mullions at the, that are 5 feet away. So yes, it can be done. It has the effect of a clear glazing, but there's actually quite a bit of kind of a sealed gasket that makes that possible.
Okay, I like the look, so I'm just
How you do it? Yeah, I get it.
And then at the left end of the building, at the bike, the brick is very regulated and it's nicely composed. But when you look at the elevation, it seems to step up, and so that if you look at the elevation from the street, it kind of steps up and it doesn't align with the top of the glass at the retail. I was just wondering if there was something that you were trying to achieve there, or if that could align with the glass.
So I think we actually we had some alternative designs that we presented last time, where at least one of them had this canopy flush with the top, and it kind of gave it was a little bit out of scale with pedestrian, such as shown here, where it just gets too tall, and bringing this thing down does create a nice effect of kind of a place to walk under. It's only about a 3-foot projection, maybe a little more, but I think when we look at, I'd be happy to show you that. I don't know, maybe perhaps you want to. Yeah, so that's the effect of this was our scheme 1, I think, where it's all brought up like that. And of course, it's a slightly different because there's brick up there, but we needed to increase the amount of glass in their calculation. And there's one more. Yeah, this one we loaded too. So, yeah, I think I'd be interested to hear others. I know Deborah last time had said that bringing it down actually helped the scale of the building some. So,
Well,
yeah.
I think that the elevation of the canopy looks good in relation to the window. I was referring to where it steps up above the bikes, and it doesn't align with
Oh,
the
I
top
see up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
You were trying to make that like a different space and make it a little bit more celebrated, or is that okay?
Well, it is just we have this there are these sort of little things in the building that we were trying to create a little more of a monumental cutout here, so that correspond a little bit to the scale of the other side of the corner. As opposed to, we certainly could bring this down if you thought that would be stronger. But that was the idea.
Yeah, it's tough because it's so close to the height of the glass. It kind of either wants to be a little bit more separate or either wants to align with the glass.
It's an interesting observation that I should have picked up on earlier, but interesting comment. If you can make that a condition, I'm sure we can live with that.
I'm going to jump in here because I think we've hit our 30-minute discussion mark. And I was wondering what the commission would like to do now if you feel like you're in a place to vote on a facade option and the design guidelines and additional guidance, or if there are any other concerns you feel haven't been met.
I would be ready to vote on a facade option. I'm less comfortable with, I think, two unresolved things. I think one is the detailing of the penthouse, given that it really is of the building. There's a base, there's a middle, penthouse is the top of the building, and the materiality of the non-street facing facades.
Sound like very good additional pieces of design guidance.
Yeah, I asked is it possible that those should be made conditions of things that we review before we go to the planning board? That
I was thinking the same thing. Obviously, we haven't designed the entire building to the nth degree at this stage.
Yeah, I mean, generally, I think and I guess I would offer this for discussion by the other commission members. I think in the past, where we have provided kind of specific guidance, I think that's how we've handled it, just it's additional design guidance. In this case, it's kind of design. I'm not sure what the solution is. There isn't kind of a prescriptive guidance that we can provide, that it just needs additional design work.
Well, I mean, you could, if I may, you could state that you want more articulation on the screening to the planning board, and then that would be on us to do something that pleases them. Or you could say you would like to see, I don't know, some, as the earlier suggestion was, ask the planning board to have us provide materials to their satisfaction for the other sides of the building, so they can see what we're proposing. It's obviously we're not in person passing hard samples around like we used to, so it's a little harder to do this on a computer screen. But we could certainly, as the earlier suggestion was made, that would be a fair, I think, request of the planning board, and then that would be on them.
I will also bring up, this is Andrew Graminsky, that the applicant will need to provide a UDC design review report, which they need to address the sort of the feedback the commission makes, and if it was incorporated or not, if it was not incorporated, why it wasn't incorporated, sort of, et cetera. But I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention.
Of course. Thank you, Andrew. Yep, that is true.
Can we request a mock-up? If it was one requested by Tim?
I think at this point, that is not something that is required for a building of this scale. It's something that the planning board could.
Is it only the planning board's jurisdiction to ask for a mock-up?
Yes. The planning board would need to condition it as part of the approval.
So Tim, can we ask for the planning board to consider a mock-up? Because I think that there's a lot of things that we would like to see, right? It seems like the stucco, the windows, the shadow boxes, there's a lot of things that we would like to see. And if we ask for it, hopefully they'll take it into consideration.
Yeah, I think we should.
I think we should.
I definitely want to record that we have no objection to.
I guess my question for the other commission members is whether we're comfortable that the design as currently proposed meets the design guidelines and so on. And I think we can provide additional design guidelines, but especially for the design guideline that has to do specifically with the kind of coherent whole, and then the one related to EFS stucco.
Yeah, it feels like it's a material. It's now that step, you know, the design intent from what we're looking at is acceptable. But I agree with you about the stucco. I want to see that, you know, the relationship between that, the brick, and the kind of detailing that would be given to, you know, on that facade. So I feel like it's sort of a material and built. So I think the idea of a mock-up is a good idea. Recommending a mock-up.
No,
Yeah,
I think that's a fair idea. Yeah.
I would also.
And I think in terms of, you know, I understand there's, you know, again, thinking about those facades, I understand there's additional cost to go to a brick, but this is, you know, this is a significant commercial lab building. You know, it's an important building, and I think there needs to be the investment in high quality materials from all sides of the building that are visible. So I guess.
So what
I'm sorry,
I'm
go ahead.
hearing-
Well, I just wanted to express that I would support if we could get a mock-up or request a mock-up. I'm also concerned with the quality of the stucco material and product in relation to juxtaposition to the brick and what that's going to look like. And I do agree that this is a high-end building. I think some more of the high-end materials that are presented on the main facade should carry over a little bit more on the sides.
So I think where I'm at after this discussion, unless anyone disagrees with me, is I am okay taking the votes, but I'd like to incorporate the additional design guidance that we discussed. I'd like to highlight a couple of the design guidelines as priority design guidelines, and then take a separate vote requesting that the planning board condition approval on preparing a mock-up.
All right, so I'm hearing three clear directions that the
Whoops.
I think we lost you.
Emily, we can't hear you.
I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right. I am dreadfully sorry about that. I'm hearing that the commission is ready to vote on a facade option. They are ready. You are ready to vote that the design guidelines for the MR4 district have been met, highlighting some specific guidelines for additional consideration and prioritization by the planning board. And that there is some clear additional design guidance to be incorporated, particularly regarding the materiality of the building on the non-street facing sides, the articulation of the penthouse, and recommending that the planning board consider requesting a mock-up for their review prior to approval.
Yes.
All right. Do
So,
we want to take these in
Sure, actually,
one at a time?
sure.
sorry, go ahead.
I'm not sure which facade number this is.
I believe Peter said
Can
it
you
was
remind
2.
me?
Yeah,
This is facade option.
this was originally facade number 2.
So then, in that case, I would motion to recommend facade option 2.
I will second.
Oh, sorry, that's my role. Now we're going to take a roll call vote. Let's see. And for this, Frank, you would simply abstain. So Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
Tim Hood,
Yes.
Frank Valdez.
Abstain.
All right, thank you. So that motion passes. The next motion we're looking for is whether the design guidelines have been met for the MR4 district, and any particular guidelines that should be highlighted.
I'd like to highlight 3 guidelines. Guideline E, M, and T. E is vents, exhaust, and other utility features should be architect integrated into the design of the building. I think that's actually something that isn't included on these drawings and should be when it comes to the planning board. I'm sure there's exhaust fans and other high plume exhaust fans and things that are required to be located above the penthouse roof. M is selection of materials, fenestration, and ornamentation should result in consistent and harmonious composition that appears as a unified whole. I think that's one that we're not quite there yet on. And then T is mechanical penthouses. Oh no, I'm sorry, I meant S, not T. S is exterior insulation and finish systems should be avoided. Just flagging that.
Okay, so is the motion that the design guidelines for the MR4 district have been met with the understanding that those 4 guidelines, E, M, S, and T, need further consideration?
Yes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, seconded by Deborah Fennick. For a roll call vote, Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yeah.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
Tim Hood,
Yes.
Frank Valdez.
Abstain.
All right. That motion carries. And then finally, we need a vote to incorporate additional design guidance. And the design guidance that I have from my notes, there is the recommendation for the additional review of the materials of the building, particularly those on the non-street facing facades, and evaluating how materials on the main facade can carry over to the non-street facing facades to maintain some uniformity. Also that the detailing on the penthouse should receive particular consideration, and there should be consideration to greater articulation in the screening element. And finally,
articulation, sorry, just articulation and also integration with the overall architectural language of the building.
all right. And then with the third piece of guidance, that the planning board consider requesting or requiring a mock-up of the building for a thorough review of the materials that are being proposed.
I think that all sounds good. I think one other item that came up was the transformer location, the transformer vault. So I think clarifying the feasibility of below grade transformers and presenting an alternate location, if not feasible.
Excellent. All right, I have those 4 items down. Do I have a second to that motion?
Well, second.
Second.
All right. I think Tim Hood beat you to it, Andrew. All right. Roll call vote. Andrew Arbaugh,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
Tim Hood,
Yes.
Frank Valdez.
Stay.
All right. All right, that carries all motions, and that concludes the design review for 32 to 44 White Street. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank
Appreciate
you to
it.
the commission.
Everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, next up, we have 8 Medford Street. This applicant is also returning, having presented at the last, at the previous UDC meeting. Do we have the applicants for 8 Medford Street here?
Yes, I'm Vigorita as the attorney for 8 Medford Street, and I'm joined by Tanya Carrier from Calsa Design, our architect, and we do have Verdant as well, and also the developers here, Nelson Oliveira. So at this time, I'm going to hand it off to Tanya, and she'll go right into the plan. And I'm having a problem muting myself for some reason. So Emily, I may need your assistance. I apologize. I don't want any background noise while Tanya is presenting.
Thanks, Ann. We'll take care of that.
All right,
Great.
thank you, Ed.
Oh,
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, go ahead, Tanya. Sorry.
Okay, perfect. Great. Good evening. Tanya Carey from Calsa Design. We'll be addressing 8 Medford Street, as Ann mentioned. We were here about a month ago, and we heard some very productive feedback, and we hope that we've incorporated it for you. Just a reminder of the project team: developer Nelson Group, Nelson Oliveira, architect Calsa Design, landscape architect Verdant Landscape Architecture, and Erin will be presenting the landscape changes today, and GM2 for traffic. And I'll do a brief recap of the full project, but just very briefly. So our site is located on the corner of Medford and Warren Street, and we're actually right on the Cambridge line. We have a site of about just over 6,000 square feet, and we're in the MR4 zone, with Medford Street being a pedestrian designated street. And the view of what's there now: so there's an existing 3-story flat roof structure, and the rest of the lot is paved. And a brief summary: so we're proposing a general style building. So the ground floor would be commercial space at approximately 2250 square feet. And the full building area would be just over 21,400 square feet. And above the commercial space, we propose 18 residential units, rentals, and 20% of the units to be affordable, which would be 4 units in this case. And some of our public improvements are increasing the sidewalks on both Medford and Warren Street to 12 feet wide per the zoning code. Addition of 4 street trees, enclosing an existing curb cut on Medford Street, and addition of visitor bike parking. We also propose a green roof and permeable area to the site to help with drainage. Currently, like I said, it's all paved and has the building there. And we have some building amenities, including the common roof deck with green roof, 40 long-term spaces for bikes, more than double the amount of units. We have bike parking along with our visitor spaces. We have an interior package room and trash room, and we have some Juliet balconies. In our studio 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom mix, we have 6 units that are studios, 9 units 1-bedrooms, and 3 2-bedroom units. So at our first meeting, these were kind of the main comments we received. So the renderings were kind of missing real life context. So we've added in realistic renderings showing the adjacent existing buildings along with the proposed development that's been approved across Warren Street. And another item was the two of the schemes had masonry bays, which were cantilevered. And the idea that you guys spoke about, which made a lot of sense, was that that was a heavy material being cantilevered versus a lighter material you typically see on a bay. So we've done some reworking there on the facade. And you also mentioned to start a conversation with the city about the public improvements on the public realm. So we did have a meeting just recently, a couple of days ago. We took a little bit to get it scheduled, and Erin will go over what we found there and what was discussed. Our existing plot plan and proposed. So here you can see our 4-story building fronting on Medford Street and Warren. Our residential entries on Warren, and we kept Medford Street as all commercial, being the pedestrian designated street. Sense there. And then we have our trash room here, adjacent, fully enclosed, package room, elevator, and 2 stairs, along with our bike parking just off of the railroad side of the site. And you can get to that from inside the building or outside directly. So at this point, I'll turn it to Erin from Verdant just to briefly go over the landscape changes that were made and the outcome of that meeting.
Erin, this is Andrew Grabinski. You are free to talk. I see that you are unmuted on your end.
Erin, we still can't hear you.
But it shows that you're appearing as you're unmuted.
Tanya, would you like to keep going and give Erin a couple minutes to try to figure out that?
That's a great idea. Yep. So we'll continue with the rest of the architecture first.
Sorry about that, Erin. As you've seen with me previously, I had some technical difficulties earlier too. So.
All right, so here we did a nice side-by-side comparison. So the left side of this page is our first meeting, and the second column is today, our revised design. And apologies that they're at slightly different angles, but that's due to that we wanted to show the entire context as requested, both sides of the building. So I'll do these one by one, but this is just kind of a brief overview to show what we've done. So, okay, so option 1 for facade scheme. This was our previous. We had brick on the bays, which was reading as a bit heavy, and we did not have the context to show how it might fit in. So what we've come back with today is we've kind of reversed the materials. So we've kept the brick on the first floor, extended it up 2 levels on the main massing. And then on the bays, we've put the lighter material. So we've done kind of a standing seam metal siding with an insert area of a lighter gray panel, composite panel. And we've used that same panel on the top floor as well to give the top a lighter feel. And here you can see the existing large structure to the left, just past the railroad track. It is a good distance away because there's a railroad track and a full parking lot. And then just across Warren Street, this is currently the Cubby oil site, but we've superimposed the model that has been approved already by your team and the planning board to show how it might fit in with that development when they're both constructed. And just a couple additional views showing other sides of the building. So we've kept the same style all the way around. And here we've also used gridded windows, which is a little bit different than the other schemes. And one more context photo showing coming from Medford Street from the Cambridge Way, how it could look. So you can see this side here, which abuts the railroad track, and then Medford Street with the different bays and the other development across the way. And just a larger view of that first image. This is how it looks currently with the Somerville gas station if that building were not constructed. Okay, so moving to option 2. This scheme, we didn't change as much, but we did provide the context because there weren't too many comments on this one. So this has kind of lighter materials on top. The brick does not extend all the way up, but we do have brick on the first floor. So here's the revised version showing context. So we have a 3-story bay above the base with our signage, and we have different materials such as hardy or composite panels in kind of a fun color, an orange color, and then we have insets with lap siding and different Juliet bays, and we've done simpler casement style windows in the scheme. And a few different views of that building, again carrying the same treatment all the way around. And a close-up showing coming from the Cambridge side how it could look with the lighter panel top and then the accent color on the base. And this gray brick kind of coordinates with the development proposed next door. There is both gray, or there's proposed gray brick in the neighborhood and there's existing red brick, so either could be argued as a potential option. And just one more view how it would look with the Somerville gas station there. Now to our last scheme. So this was our previous proposal with the gray brick on the bays, and this had more of the textured monochrome feel with the pop of bronze accent around the window areas. And here is our revised option. So this kind of fits in nicely with the neighborhood context. So we've done 3 levels of gray brick, and then on the bays, we've done white lap siding along with the wood texture fiber cement and kind of like a driftwood scheme, and then our bronze accents around the windows. And this has a lower bay than the other schemes where the corner wraps in a different treatment. A couple more images, how that would look. And finally, the additional view coming from Cambridge side. We did work in Juliet balconies, and we staggered them on here and on the other side for a little bit more dynamic feature in the scheme. And just the corner view. So here's just again kind of comparison, all 3 schemes, so it's just easy to digest all together. And at this point, I'll see if Erin's fixed her audio.
And just a reminder that you have about 8 minutes left to present.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I see Erin has her hand up. Erin, you may need to unmute from your. Oh,
Yeah, Erin, you're self-muted.
All right. So we see you're unmuted. I'm still not hearing you if you're speaking.
Erin, it may be worth maybe leaving the meeting and coming back. All right, she has left, so we'll just give her a second. We're still self-muted on your end, Erin.
So Aaron, if you click that unmute button, then we'll see if we can hear you now.
Okay, are
Do
you
we see
able to hear me now?
Yes,
we are.
there we go.
Great, sorry about that.
No problem.
So Erin Hosseini Fitch from Verdant. Just to go briefly over what was previously shown. It was our early phase of the landscape plan, so the streetscape was not fully refined yet, so it did lead to a conversation that we did have with the Public Space and Urban Forestry Department, as well as mobility. And then beyond the streetscape itself, what was currently proposed was alongside and rear property lines are native buffer plantings. So that's mostly what you see in the top portion of the site. And then to go more into the current revised plan, based on the discussion that we had with the city, we did start to refine the streetscape. So previously we had proposed within the extended 12-foot width sidewalk, it was previously 6-foot width public right of way and then a 6-foot width tree pit and special paving zone. This has been revised to be an actually 8-foot width public right of way for the sidewalk. And then a 4-foot width for the tree wells and special paving. The tree wells themselves extended longitudinally to make up for that shorter width. And then since the public right-of-way was extended, we had additional room along the frontage of the building. So here we were able to add benches for pedestrians, seasonal planters at entryways within this space. We also were able to tuck in some of the bike racks that are required for the development within this frontage zone that is also within the property line. And then additional bike racks for other visitors are along the streetscape. And then the trails themselves are proposed as 4x10, providing 40 square foot of soil and space for the trees to grow. This will include structural soils below the trees and connecting to the different tree wells. And then there are also tree guards that will be installed at these different tree pits to additionally provide protection of the trees. And those were the main updates for this landscape.
Yeah, so that actually concludes our
Just a
presentation.
question. Sorry, go ahead, Tanya.
I was just saying that concludes our presentation, so now we'll turn it over to you guys.
On the landscape, does this match the detailing on the other side of the street?
Erin, do you want to speak to that?
Sorry, what do you mean by the other side of the street?
The proposed, I think it's the Somerville gas, the streetscape that was proposed for the adjacent building in terms of the materiality of the amenity strip and the dimensionality, dimensions.
The dimensions for it's the 1620 property. They are currently proposed as 6-foot width right-of-ways. The city PSF department, so that might be discussed later on. They were okay with this variation in the dimensions. As for materiality, they are both special permeable unit paving along these tree zones. And then the tree species do actually differ from the 1620 Medford property. That way it starts to break up the developments and it's not one monotonous streetscape as well. And then the tree guards will also be similar materials.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think having the trees not match is great, but it would be, I don't know, when we get to that point, we should have it in there that the pavers themselves should match and that the tree guards should match.
Certainly. Thank you.
So
Two other
to
comments,
that point,
just on the
sorry, Tim, I was just going to jump in and say to that point, do we want to discuss the landscape first, as I believe their presentation is complete?
Yeah, at least on the last round, I didn't have major issues with the landscape. I think that the major piece was just making sure that it was going to be consistent with what's across the street.
Any other questions, comments about the landscaping?
I just have one comment. It looks like there isn't any sort of accessible curb cut at the corner. So that should be incorporated into the design.
So there will not be a vehicular curb cut for the development. Any drop off will actually be done at the street. As for accessible crossing, there is an existing crosswalk. So it does have that transition curve at the corner of Medford and Warren Streets.
Okay, maybe I wasn't interpreting the drawing. It looks like there was not an accessible way to jump the curb here, where the letters QPG are.
It's not shown with the sort of flanking cuts or the detectable warning pavers, but those would be required.
We can add it to the plan. I think we're intending it, but it is not shown here. Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, and I think the impact of that it's a pretty wide crosswalk, so it might impact tree placement. Especially the one that's closest to the corner. I think I actually think this is preferable, the 8-foot, 4-foot division between the walking surface and the planting strip. So I hope that is something that can be looked at least along Medford for the adjacent property as well. I know that's more of a comment to the city, obviously not to this development team. Also appreciate, like I mentioned last time, that the doors are set in and aren't swinging out into the walking space of the sidewalk. So there are a number of projecting bays on each side of the building. Is that something that is being coordinated with tree placement? Is there any concern about proximity of trees to the projecting bays above?
So you can see here the dash lines where the bays are projecting. So they would not come close to the trees are on the outside of the curb here. So I think there should be plenty of room, but we can look at where they fall.
Tanya, if you show the previous landscape plan, it actually does have the dash line on it. So we have been coordinating the bays with the trees.
Okay.
Are there any other questions, comments about the landscaping? Hearing none, do we want to move to the building design? Do we want to discuss a preferred option?
Anyone want to go first? Should I go first?
Sure.
Yeah, I appreciate the refinements. I think there are improvements from what we've seen the last time, and appreciate the context as well. I'd be interested to hear the architect's preference. I think mine is for option 2. The colored bays add variety along the street. I think that's materially consistent with some of the adjacent buildings, but it's a pop of color and a pop of interest here. In the rendering, the material in between the bays is appearing very dark. I think from the palette that you're showing here, it doesn't look like it would be quite as dark, which I think would be a good thing. And I think there's there's a consistency with the building next door without repetition, which maybe is part of creating a somewhat cohesive streetscape along here.
So I'm still uncomfortable with the what do you call it? The aggressiveness of the corner projection. And it's projecting on both faces of the street, and having it go all the way to the top makes it even, I just, this gesture of you have to have a tower on the corner, I feel like is so overdone in the city, and so I'm actually not keen on option 2, because it's both in terms of massing, it's very aggressive, and the color is pretty strong. But and I guess I'm just not appreciating that gesture. It feels like something should come down to the street, when it's a bay. The bay windows feel well scaled, and I actually have to say all of these are improvements from the last time we talked. So I want to commend the design team for that. But again, I'm still having problems with the tower, and then making it as tall as the roof line, if not taller. I think is just making something that feels too heavy for what it's coming down on. And I don't know, Tanya, is it the same projection as the side bay windows? Or is it great?
They're all, I believe they're all 3 feet projection.
Yeah.
Actually,
the dotted lines make it look like they are all the same, but I was just curious if that's accurate.
Yeah, so they're all 3 feet projection, because we are required to have windows on the sides, so we wouldn't be able to go any less than that. Just the zoning requires it.
So, given if that bay window is going to stay like that, I think the third one, in terms of massing, I don't know, it's a little stumpy there. I mean, I wish it were. It feels, I still feel like it's too aggressive. Maybe it shouldn't break the cornice line. Maybe it should be, more like the height of the flanking bay windows. Did you try that option for massing?
Not here. So you're saying on option 2, having the bay stop at the height of the other bay, and then the top material just wrap around? Yeah, that could.
Yeah, so that's an interesting suggestion, Deborah. I think in option 3, there is a 3-story bay there, but it doesn't break the main cornice line. It's a foot below. It's set a foot below. I wonder if having that high cornice line run consistently all the way around the building, but just pulling the height of the bay down might get at what you're thinking of.
Yeah, then I do like the color palette once we do that. It just holds together. Right now, it's just these small things trying to, dominate the composition, especially that corner piece. And I think that would then make a much, more appropriate scale.
Okay, thank you.
I was drawn to option 2 and 3. I think when you first presented, I was more partial to the corner going all the way to the roof. But I think the refinements in the materials in option 3 kind of drives me more towards option 3. There's a lot of contrast in the colors in option 2. I don't mind the bright colors. It just that looking at it from the corner, it just seems to be a lot of it, and it kind of makes it a little less special, I guess. So I think I'm leaning towards option 3, and the height of the corner. I understand the comments there, and I could see that height of that corner piece being played with a little bit more, to be not as strong as number 2, but maybe a little bit stronger.
Yeah, again, I think it could match the height of the bay windows on option 3. you know, so it's coming up, so we'd have a little more, it'd be a little more vertical. And then maybe the windows don't want to be, you know, in that one. So it gives it a more vertical expression, even though the massing isn't more vertical. You know what I'm saying? So it does capture the windows on the top floor, like the other two, like the flanking ones.
Okay, just so I understand, so in option 3, you're saying to extend the corner bay up to the height of these other bays, that's just
Yep.
slightly below the highest point? Okay,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, because it looks a little bit weak being quite that low, but you don't want it,
Yeah,
you know. Yeah.
Looks like a blob on it. Yeah.
One thing that I'm wondering about, and maybe I'm not as much of a fan of than option 3, is the use of the wood texture fiber cement facade, which seems like it's almost like it's boarding up some of the window in each punched opening. You know, it's not cladding a bay, it's not cladding a facade, it's filling a punched opening, which is different than how materials are being used in the other cases.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think it could be the option 2 palette and the option 3, what we talked about, modifying on option 3 for the massing. I think could be. I agree with you, Tim, about the wood look.
Yeah, I kind of like the little bit more subdued palette in number 3, and I would agree that a different material could be explored in lieu of the wood. You know, there's the lining of horizontal lines of the siding contrasting with the vertical grain of the wood. It does seem like in what comes across as like a framed opening, they seem to be too much in contrast.
So I'm hearing some different
One of
things.
the things that I do like.
Go
One
ahead.
of the things I do like about option 3 is the materiality of floors 2 and 3 coming down to grade.
Yeah.
Maybe that gets to the grounding of the building that you were talking about, Deborah. Because it's not a very big building. So to split up the ground level and for it to have its own material, and then for stories 2 and 3 to have its own material, and then story 4 to be different. I think just having the bays not come down to the ground is enough to differentiate the ground floor. It can be the same material on the first 3.
Yep. So I think we have our hybrid.
So can you read the last comment? You said having the base come down? Is that what you said? Or just the
Yeah.
brick show, the 3-story brick?
Yeah, the 3-story brick.
Okay, I thought I heard bays coming down to the ground, so I just want to make sure.
So to clarify, sorry, so the commission would like the brick on the first 3 floors, including the ground floor, as shown on option 3. Okay, so what I've heard then is the commission likes the material palette for option 3, with the caveat that the fiber cement would or the wood texture fiber cement be reconsidered to an altered material, or just have some other materials be considered there. And that the corner for option 3 be increased in height to the same height as the bay windows as shown on option 3.
Yep.
So slightly lower than the roof line, but higher than, but just hitting that where the bay windows are in option 3. Is the commission at a consensus? Have I summarized it appropriately?
Yeah, just a question. I think we talked about the orange material, and we talked about possibly a hybrid between 2 and 3. I'm not sure I feel strongly either way, but I was initially drawn to using a brighter color somehow to accentuate the bays. I think is everyone thinking there's a preference for the more restrained palette of 3?
I was leaning more towards the restrained palette. But I'm not in opposition to like any review of brighter colors from option 2, kind of in the mix with this option 3.
Not to confuse things, but I think if taking option 3 and just substituting the wood look with the orange would not be very satisfactory. Not be, I think the composition of the orange color in number 2, I think works well if that were the approach, to take. So it's not a simple. So if it's going to be, to offset windows and stuff, I think it wants to be very muted palette. But if it's a little more organized as it is, the colors are in option 2, but with all the changes we talked about, then a brighter color could be used. It's not totally confusing.
Yeah. Well, originally I thought you were kind of leaning towards option 2, but do 3 stories of gray brick and then just change the bay heights all to be similar to the option 3 smaller bay heights.
I think that works.
Now I'm confused which way you guys want to go.
Yeah, I sort of prefer that. I think the shifting windows is not necessarily, again, the scale of the building. I think, the more sort of stable composition, I think is stronger, and the verticality of number 2, in terms of the window proportions and stuff, I think is good. Yeah, so it is maybe taking option 2 and doing, the gray brick, for 3 stories and modifying the bay and corner bay height to all be the same, just short of the roof line.
Yeah, I think that could be a nice option to look at.
So I think we've reached some
So is that
conflicting perspectives again, because I've heard from a couple of you that you prefer the color palette for option 3, and a couple preferred color palette for option 2. I think there's consensus that the bay windows and the corner bump out should all be the same height at the 3 stories at just below the roof line. Is that where I am actually hearing consensus?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
I think so, yes. Though I would wonder whether the bay, should it just be the Medford Street facing bays, the kind of primary street, and should the secondary street, Warren Street, have a 2-story bay? Is there a logic there? Or are we thinking all 3 be 3 stories?
I can see value in that to change the strategy on the secondary street is to be not as pronounced as strong as the main street.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting suggestion, Tim.
The only thing to point out is across Warren Street, we are doing the taller bays on that one. So it'd be could go either way.
Alternatively, the commission could provide recommendation for either materials or certain aspects of one option or the other, and then in the additional guidance, say, explore certain things.
Yeah, I think, well, I guess maybe jumping ahead a little, I think we should move this project forward tonight and provide recommendation and additional guidance. I think it seems like we've come to consensus on the basic organization of option 3, with the 3-story base, 4th-story clad material, and 3-story bays that are slightly below the main cornice line. We have questioned whether the Warren Street facing bay should be 2 or 3 stories. I'm not sure. I'm not sure I have clear direction on that. And then I think we questioned, well, I think we've said that the offset windows and the use of the wood texture fiber cement paneling for 3 should be reconsidered. I'm not sure we've come to consensus on whether it's the hardy siding for the bays or whether it's the brighter colored panel.
But I think the consensus that the wood texture fiber cement should be reconsidered. I think that's some reasonable guidance. So I think am I correct in thinking that option 3 with those considerations is the commission's recommendation? All right, do I have a motion? Oh, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking about Deborah's comment about the windows in the projecting bay and the shifting windows. Was that reflected in your summary? I'm not sure if I heard that.
No, it wasn't. So I think that should be added.
I think that maybe that can be added to the additional design guidance when that's incorporated.
Because I think the comment there was to possibly eliminate the wood in those bays. And then in option 2, it looks like there's more glass. So maybe if there's less solid surface and a window that is different in the bays than that it's in the brick, so maybe a little bit more glass or something.
Okay, so I'm hearing option 3 with the considerations that the corner be increased in height to match the bay windows just below the roof line, that the wood texture fiber cement material be reconsidered, and that the areas where the wood texture fiber cement is currently being used in place of windows, those be reconsidered, and real windows be considered in those locations?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so option 3 with those considerations. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
All right, roll call vote. Andrew Arbaugh?
Yes.
Tim Talon?
Yes.
Deborah Fennick?
Yes.
Tim Hood?
Yes.
Frank Valdez? Is Frank still here? All right, Frank has left the meeting. All right. Next, on the agenda, we need to have a vote on whether the design guidelines for the MR4 district have been met. Are there any specific design guidelines that any commission members would like to call out? Or do I have just a motion that the design guidelines have been met?
I'm trying to, I do have one. It has to do with how the building meets the ground. Maybe not. Maybe I'll just make a separate motion. In that case, I'll motion that the design guidelines for the MR4 district have been met.
Second.
We lost you again, Emily.
Sorry, I actually had myself on mute for that. That was not a technical error. That was just me being foolish. So I have a motion and a second. Andrew Arbaugh?
Yes.
Tim Talon?
Yes.
Deborah Fennick?
Yes.
Tim Hood?
Yes.
All right. 2 out of 3. And do we have any additional design guidance to incorporate? So I think what I have in my notes is that the materials, particularly, again, noting that the wood texture fiber cement be reevaluated and that the placement of windows be considered, particularly where there is currently proposed wood texture fiber cement.
Yeah, I think specifically to avoid the staggered window pattern.
Yeah, the stacked look in option 2, I guess, more effective.
Streetscape palette should match across the street.
Yes, streetscape palette. All right, so those 3.
The other one, yeah, and I don't know if we incorporate this in the design guidance or just make a separate motion on this. But I brought this up before. I think I brought it up with the building next door. Concern about a couple buildings that have been done, such as the one on Broadway, where there's exposed concrete and insulation at the base. I think how this building meets the ground is really important to the quality of the public realm. So I would request that reasonably large scale details showing how this building meets the sidewalk be provided as part of the site plan review application, and that the planning board consider conditioning certificate of occupancy on compliance with details, evaluation of compliance with those details.
I think that is sufficiently design related.
Okay.
All right, so I have the reconsideration of the wood texture fiber cement, the windows, consider the stacked look of option 2 and avoid the staggering of the window patterns. The streetscape palette should match across the street, and that the materials where the building meets the street be carefully considered and reviewed by the planning board, and that detailed plans demonstrating those details and how they will meet the street be be requested by the planning board, and that compliance with those plans be a condition of a certificate of occupancy.
Yes.
All right, I have those four. Oh, go ahead.
If this building is constructed prior to the one across the street, how should that wording of the pavers be met? Because this one couldn't control what the other one does after, in a sense.
So I think the recommendation that the streetscape palette should match from one side of the street to the other, that would be appropriate, and that would be something that the Public Space and Urban Forestry Department division would consider and work with both you and the other applicants to make sure they match. I think that's going to be something that they require regardless, and they'll coordinate with you. So
Okay.
I don't think there will be any negative impacts if one goes before the other. If your project goes before the other one, I don't think there should be any issue.
Okay, I just wanted to know legally if that wording was correct, because if this goes first, we're not going to be matching the other. The other's going to be matching us. So it's okay.
We can work on the wording to with the commission's permission. Andrew Graminsky and I can work on that wording to make sure it doesn't unnecessarily restrict this application's materials. All right, do I have a motion or?
So moved.
All right, second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Andrew Arbaugh?
Yes.
Tim Talon?
Yes.
Deborah Fennick?
Yes.
Tim Hood?
Yes.
All right. And so we are all set. That concludes this design review. And we will get those written recommendations to the applicants ASAP.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, and for the UDC, that concludes this meeting. Would someone like to make a motion to close the meeting?
I've got just a couple of housekeeping items before we close up. I think Andrew had sent out an email with an updated set of rules and regulations, which I have not had a chance to look at yet. And just wanted to confirm when that was going to be on the agenda for discussion.
So we are looking at that being on the next agenda. We are just finishing up senior staff review to confirm that everything meets the legal requirements and that these rules are consistent with the planning boards and the zoning boards as well.
Okay.
And
And
Kim,
so
that
are you
meeting will be
looking for any
December 13th.
comments?
Sorry?
December
Next
13th.
meeting.
Okay.
December 13th.
Yes.
And just to give you a heads up, that'll probably be the only agenda item. We will probably not have any design review in December.
So plenty of time to discuss. And if commission members would like to provide comments directly to PPZ staff, they can be provided directly to Andrew. If you have any questions, concerns that you would like to discuss or clarify ahead of time.
Okay. Okay, so I guess we can send comments beforehand if we want. Next item, just I think it was a little over a year ago, we requested setting up a meeting with the planning board to talk with planning board members. I understand there are 2 new planning board members that have recently been confirmed. So it seems like a great time to revisit that.
So a note on that, I don't believe the new planning board members have been sworn in yet. So I can follow up on that. I can speak with Sarah Lewis and Rice as the planning board liaison. I can speak with the both of them and see what steps might be taken for that.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the purpose is really to kind of discuss the role of the UDC. Ultimately, we're a recommending authority, making recommendations to the planning board. So I think discussing the different expertises that members on the commission have and how we can best work together in the review process and assist them would be great.
All right.
Yeah, and so this is the final draft that we have, or you said it's going through review. So is it going to get updated before we see it, or are we going to be talking about the draft we received today?
We will hopefully be talking about the draft that you have received. It's received some very minor edits from what was provided last time. It's gone through review by about half of senior staff at this moment. We're just waiting for that other half.
So there might be an updated.
There might, but you will receive it as soon as we have it, and we will make sure to provide that updated draft before the meeting, with time for you to review.
Super. Okay, thanks.
The last item I had was just a follow up on something that the commission voted on, I believe, over the summer. We discussed, I think, the commission's purview. We talked about backyard cottages, which I understand zoning's been updated to kind of remove that from our purview. We also talked about urban design plans and kind of extending our purview to reviewing those.
Tim, do you mean master plan special permits?
Yes, master plan special permits.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is something
and urban design frameworks as well. So master plan special permits and urban design frameworks. I understand that the city council is going through the charter review process. And I spoke with a city councilor recently who kind of suggested to me that the Urban Design Commission consider providing, I guess, either documentation of this or some written comment as part of this process that would relate to our purview, because part of what they're looking at is the overall scope of different boards and commissions and the role that they play in the city. So I wanted to table that for discussion and see if there was interest in putting together a letter.
So I think considering how deeply we're getting into this, I'd recommend, just for the sake of open meeting law, having this item on the agenda for the next meeting. So we can make sure that it's on the agenda, the note of the discussion. That will also give Andrew Gruminski and me time to discuss with Sarah Lewis what the UDC can do in terms of motions or in terms of just providing comments to the city council. And again, what your options are as a commission.
Okay. That sounds good to me. I think the comment period is open until January, so we have time.
Could we also add just an update of in-person meetings on the next one? We've never met in person.
Oh, we used to meet in person.
So UDC has never been in person. DRC did, but
that might be true. Yes.
UDC did not start until the 20th or April 16th, 2020.
All right, I will add discussion, or I'll speak with Andrew Gruminski and Sarah Lewis to see if that can be added to the agenda as well. All right. If there is no other business, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Second? Okay, second. All in favor? Andrew Arboff,
Yes.
Tim Talon,
Yes.
Deborah Fennick,
Yes.
Tim Hood.
Yes.
All right. Thank you all very much. I hope you all have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank
You
you.
too.
Have a good Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh.